Catherine Remer. Now the way this has come about is that the group is going to visit a place called Villers-Bretonneux in France, just near Amiens. And it's after the First World War, the school was completely destroyed. So it was rebuilt by contributions from Victorian school children. So they called it Victoria. And every morning at assembly, they raise the two flags, the Australian and the French flags, and they sing the two national anthems. And in each classroom, there is a sign, as I understand, saying, "We will never forget Australia." And the 25th is School Robin Vale on the Murray near Mildura, at which Catherine is a member, as a teacher rather, and they exchange students, and there was a class out here last year in October visiting. But we thought it would be a good idea if we went along and paid them a visit. Now, Villers-Bretonneux, of course, is the principal Australian War Memorial in France, as I understand. It's just behind the school. There's about 11,000 Australians named there who have no known graves. So it's a very important place, and through the good offices of Catherine, our group is going to go pay them a visit, and I'd like to introduce Catherine as our first speaker.
What we needed to do was to encourage recognition by young Australian students of the legacy left behind by those who went to war. The group was quite rigorously selected. As I mentioned before, there were 9 students. About 300 or so from across the state applied, and they were shortlisted to 27. What they had to do was write an essay on the qualities related to the spirit of Anzac, which included initiative, determination, sacrifice, mateship and bravery. The final 27 reached interview stage, and they had a panel of 5 who interviewed them. As one of the 2 chaperones, I also had to undergo a fairly rigorous selection myself, and I think it was my association with Villers-Bretonneux which actually enabled me to get this one. The tour organiser, who is also going this year, and he just sent me a text message this morning wishing me luck with this presentation, is John Coulson. Our 3 VIPs are the State President of the RSL, David McLaughlin, and none of us apart from John can go again. The second one was the actual tour leader, also Parliamentary Secretary to the Premier, MP for Footscray, Bruce Mildenhall. And the journalist is an expat Western Australian, Tony Charlton. We were running to a fairly tight schedule, and we needed to get our itinerary and the organisation of all the bits and pieces done. Unfortunately, we finished up not being able to go to Turkey, but I'll tell you a little bit about that later. So the itinerary was fairly important. At my suggestion, we finished up with a tour uniform, and you will actually see it in some of the slides a little bit later on. One of the things we did, and I believe it was crucial for the success of this trip, was the adopt a digger policy. All of the students adopted a digger. It could have been a relative of theirs, or some person who was noted for his bravery, like a Military Cross winner, or somebody they had been asked to look up, research, and actually find the grave of in or at the Western Front. What we took along with us was the Australian flag. We had several wreaths, and we decided that we would have a proper wreath laying ceremony for each of the diggers, and we had a few others as well. The students and the chaperones had to give presentations, so we were really quite busy. It was a very, very tight 12-day schedule, and we had no rest apart from a couple of hours in London and a couple of hours in Paris. We actually had us rest. There were many presentations to give, both formal and informal, and I had a little one on Villers-Bretonneux to give on the bus from Amiens, which is going to be the same route you will take, from Amiens to Villers. Also, right from the public launch, we were aware that we were in the media spotlight, because whenever you're travelling with the Premier, and he was with us probably for 3 days, the media entourage goes along. Getting to the itinerary, we started off in England. We then moved to Belgium, Ypres and Menengate, and if you get the chance to go to that ceremony at 8 o'clock in the evening, please do so. The bulk of it was spent, I suppose, in France, the Somme, and obviously Villers-Bretonneux. And we were invited to attend the Villers-Bretonneux Anzac Day ceremony. Then it was back to England and home. But I do want to talk to you today about Villers-Bretonneux. It's a town now of about 4,000 people. It's in Picardy, and Picardy, unfortunately, is renowned for its bad French. So apparently the worst French spoken is in this particular area. It's in the department of the Somme. It's in the arrondissement of Amiens, the canton of Corbie, and its written history actually dates back to the 12th century, as does the coat of arms which you see on the screen. Unfortunately, it has a very long history of invasion and occupation. In 1415, it was occupied by the English. In 1639, it was destroyed by the Spanish. In 1816, it was occupied by the Cossacks, and in 1870, it successfully fought off the Prussians. In World War I, it was occupied several times by the Germans, with some 80% of it being destroyed. And here you can see a before and after. I thought what I'd do is give you a very quick soldier's view of the actual release of Villers-Bretonneux from German occupation, dating the 24th and 25th of April 1918. The English replacements were inexperienced 18 and 19-year-old boys, rushed over here to fill the ranks. There was heavy fighting just to the right of Villers. For weeks, the enemy had saturated the area with Yellow Cross 2, mustard gas. By April the 24th, we had seen the first enemy tanks used on the Western Front. The town had been smashed and lost. It was a step towards the bigger prize of Amiens, but our resolve was strong, stronger than the Germans could ever anticipate. History was about to report that the Australians, fewer than 3,000 men, attacked 3 full divisions. We set off at 10 p.m. that night. The 15th Brigade had been ordered in from the left, and the 13th the right of the town. The pincer movement. More heavy shelling. The air shrieked. Houses were burning, casting a sinister light over the whole scene. Before long, it was past midnight. Anzac Day. The wry smiles meant its significance was not lost on us. A lull before Fliers and fierce, unrelenting storm of enemy machine gun fire. Then it began. With fearsome, tumultuous yelling from the 57th to the 59th, passing on to the 58th and 60th, we rushed with a vengeful roar straight towards machine gun muzzles. The crack regiments of Prussian and Bavarian guards, despite far outnumbering us, stood no chance against the wild onslaught of maddened men. It was man against man. The quickest with the bayonet would be the winner. We had advanced through a bottleneck and were not taking prisoners. Until we could join with the 13th Brigade, we were inside the bottle. Suddenly a cart carrying a Minenwerfer gun appeared as we wondered what the enemy was doing. Its hapless driver had short shrift. Another weird silence. An extraordinary scene. 1,000 men fell in 2 ranks, numbered and checked by platoon commanders. The lurid glare of the burning houses in the town glinted on the bloodied bayonets. For some the tally was 20, 30 or more of the enemy. Daylight found us digging in. It wasn't over. Machine gunners troubled us, and at 7 a.m. we were under fire again. Sleep was totally impossible. 3/4 of our casualties were caused by the shelling, which lasted until nightfall. On the northern side of Villers, 2 companies steadily pushed into the town. The enemy was captured or killed in hundreds. 2 companies of the 57th came in from the left. 2 detachments from the 13th Brigade from the right. Meeting in the centre, they turned east, sweeping the enemy out. Over 1,000, they say, were captured in the town itself. There was enormous booty, including many Minenwerfers, hundreds of machine guns, technical instruments, revolvers, etc., and even some confidential British documents. At 10 a.m, the detachments in the town appeared on its eastern fringes, filling the gap between the 2 brigades. This was the miracle of Villers-Bretonneux. The country itself is largely farming, as you can see. But in 1920, the town was ordered the Croix de Guerre, the War Cross. It was also occupied in World War II and again later awarded the Croix de Guerre with Silver Star. The farming area, of course, is largely potatoes, corn, endives, sugar beet. Not surprisingly, many of its inhabitants commute to Amiens, which is only 17 k's away, as do some of the senior secondary students when they leave the Jacques Brel College. It's been said that the earth was soaked with the blood of Australian soldiers. Some 53,000 Australians were killed on the Western Front. And one of the lesser known facts is that some of these were Aboriginal diggers, one of whom was killed in the Battle for Villers on April the 24th, 25th. And there is a really horrible description of the number of times they tried to bury that digger. 2 are actually named on the Australian National Memorial, which you see on the right of the screen there, which was erected to the memory of those who died fighting for France and Belgium. Inscribed on the wall are the names of 11,000 missing diggers. And as early as 1919, General Sir John Monash became president of the movement of the City of Melbourne to adopt Villers-Bretonneux. In a letter written in August 1920, he said, "I have expressed the opinion that there is no spot on the whole of the tortured soil of France which is more associated with Australian history and the triumph of Australian soldiers than Villers-Bretonneux." With his support and that of the Victorian State Government, the foundation stone for the Victorian Villers-Bretonneux School was laid on the 16th of June 1923, cementing an enduring relationship between the two. It recognises the contribution made by the mostly Victorian soldiers who fought for and liberated the town in 1918. Another very close association is that between my hometown and Villers-Bretonneux. And this is an aerial shot of Villers now, and I actually lived along one of the main roads there for about 3 months. That is the Mairie, and you can see the coat of arms just on the front there. This is the Jacques Brel College, which you will visit on May the 5th in the morning. That's our tour group with some of the students who repaid the trip by coming out to Australia and visiting us in October last year. I want to talk to you about Robin Cuttle. George Robin Cuttle was one of 5 children born to parents Herbert and Margaret in 1894. For Herbert's poor health, the family moved from Melbourne to Ultima in north central Victoria to open Cuttle's Mallee stores. And a little bit later in 1912, Herbert decided that Robin should have a career and settle down. so took a lease of 3,000 acres on the Murray River, known as the Cliffs, and is situated on the Bumbang Peninsula opposite Euston. Later it was extended to 10,000 acres, and Robin, at 18, was given management. Just as he was getting into the swing of it, war broke out. Robin immediately volunteered to enlist, absolutely convinced he would be a perfect recruit at 6'8" for the AIF. Unfortunately, he was rejected. Undetermined and characteristically determined to get his own way, he headed off to England to enlist in the Royal Flying Corps. Alas, he was again rejected, and again was because he was too big. So he enlisted in the Royal Field Artillery in July 1916. As a lieutenant, he served in the Somme battles that year. While attached to the 9th Division Scots Guards, he was awarded the Military Cross for great courage and determination to relieve a wounded observation officer under intense fire, and was on duty continuously for some 20 hours. Robin later wrote that his 13 months in France were the happiest in his life. But he wanted to be a pilot. What he didn't want was a 6 months training. So he applied to be an observer. He soon flew over France in early 1918. He flew with Sea Flight of the 49th Squadron. Lieutenant Leckie from Canada was his pilot. The pair went on several reconnaissance and bombing missions, and while returning from one of these, they were attacked by German fighters and shot down near Caen, just a few kilometres from Villers, on the 9th of May 1918. Back at Ultima, life had to go on. When the government extended the railway to Bumbang Peninsula, it insisted that the place have a name. On October the 24th, 1924, Margaret prepared a sign with flowers, threaded on a piece of hessian. It simply said Robinvale. It was hung at the station. This mother's tribute, Farewell to Robin, was just that. Consequently, Robinvale has an extremely close association with Villers-Bretonneux. But it wasn't until the late 1970s, that the idea of being twin towns was first considered. Began with a ceremony in Villers-Bretonneux in May 1984, being completed just over a year later in Robinvale. And proudly I can say that I was a part of that. Before I finish, I'll just go back to the spirit of Anzac and my role on it. I was the tour mother, so I used to visit the kids every night and make sure that they didn't have any problems and do all the motherly duties. I was in charge of first aid, and I had to write some speeches in French, and I've certainly got a very fond memory of trying to encourage Bruce Mildenhall, who was absolutely excellent in rehearsal on the bus, to give his speech in French. However, in front of an audience, his French became Australian. Presentation giver was part of my role too, and very much the person behind the scenes. There is an obvious legacy. The n'oublions jamais, to which Brian referred to, I think goes without saying. The students benefited enormously from it, but I certainly found out maybe almost a year later how much it affected them emotionally, and I've passed on the information to people who needed to know. We have an amazingly strong group friendship, which I think is going to last for a lifetime. For Robinvale, I'm pleased to say that one of our students has been selected for the 2006 tour, leaving in 2 weeks' time. For me personally, it's one of the reasons why I'm here. And I'd like to leave you with a few of the lasting images of this particular trip, of the Somme, of the First World War, and exactly what it means. played last year at a presentation, and one of the Vietnam War veterans absolutely insisted that it be part of the soundtrack. And this is a photograph taken of poppies by a Villers-Bretonneux resident.